Hey, welcome back to the next video. So behind the scenes, what I've done is I've just used our breakpoint loop that we've set up to go through and do some kind of boring things, just like setting widths and stuff, some different spacings, some shadows, and just some different basic styles. So in this video, we're just going to take a look at creating some kind of grid or column system. So what I've done is I've set up a couple of variables here, one for the gutter, one for grid width, and then also one for container. And if we look at our main HTML, you can see I've just got a whole bunch of divs here that are pre-styled, and they've just got some different classes applied to them, which we're going to try to create. So the classes we're going to look at creating are columns, column-size, and we're also going to look at creating offset-size. Cool. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to make a responsive container. So that should be pretty easy. We're just going to call it container. And we're just going to give it padding on the left and right of that gutter variable. Okay, so padding left, padding right, and then we're just going to center it on the screen by using auto. Cool. Alright, so those properties on the container are going to apply across all breakpoints. So now we're just going to loop over our container breakpoints that we've set up. So let's just call it breakpoint and max width in breakpoints. And all we're going to do here is we're just going to include our mixin that we created for our breakpoint. So what do we call it? We call it breakpoint up. And breakpoint up takes in two arguments. It takes in the breakpoint, and it also takes in what breakpoints it should be looking for. And so all we need to do here is we just need to say container max width is going to be the max width. Alright, looks like we've got that working already, so let's just pop it into responsive mode and just see it working. Okay, perfect. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we want to actually create the column container. Now the column container I'm just going to call columns. In other frameworks you might see this idea called row, or you might see it called grid. The reason I'm not using row is because it doesn't really make sense calling it a row. We're going to have the flex property, flex wrap set on this, so it's not a row anymore. And it's not a grid because there is a CSS grid display property now, which we might look at using as well. So I'm going to call it columns, and I think that's totally fine. Let's call it display flex, and then it's going to have a flex wrap of wrap. And that's all we need to do for that. We might consider having some kind of modifier class that we can use as well, like columns with gutters, and then in this case we'll set the margin left to be negative the gutter, and we'll set the margin right to be the same, and this way we can actually pad the columns that go into the column container. Okay, so we've got that working, it's great. All we need to do now is we just need to do another loop and get all of our columns out. So in other frameworks you might have seen the idea of a 12 column grid, where they use stuff like col-1 or col-12. But what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be outputting different percentages, and I'm just going to jump up in increments of 5%. So I've got that set up here in our grid widths variable, so it's just 5, 10, 15, 20, and each one of these is going to represent a percentage of the container. So it's good doing it this way because we don't have to be stuck using these widths within a container or within that columns variable that we've set up. So let's see. We have a mixin set up already, which gives us our breakpoint loop, so we're going to use that. And it's called breakpoint loop. It has no arguments, so we can just jump right in here and loop through each one of the widths that we have set up in our grid widths. Great. So for each one of these, we just need to create our column dash width. And we have a global variable set up thanks to this mixin called breakpoint suffix. So you can see video part 2 if you want to see how that was set up. And we're just going to say width is going to be the width. And we're just going to add a percentage sign to the end of that. And I think that should be enough to get the entire grid system working. So just compile down, and it looks like that's all working as we expect. So 50, 45, 55 looks good. So all we need to do now is we just need to reuse this each loop that we're already in, and now we can create our offsets. We don't want to be offsetting the final value. The final value is 100, so we can never offset that amount. And I don't really care about checking if the offset's actually going to fit within 100. I'm not going to make it like monkey proof or anything, so we're just going to do a check here. So we're just going to say if the current width is not 100, then we just want to make a class called offset dash. So offset dash width, and we can use that global variable again for breakpoint suffix. All we need to do is just say margin left is the width. Alright, so it looks like we have an offset now on that top grid offset column. So we're offsetting it by 50, we can offset it by 70, we can offset it by 80. I think I'll just leave it in the hands of the user to make sure they're not offsetting by too much. Cool. And I've set up some different breakpoints here with different column widths. So let's see that in action. So you can see here that the column size is changing depending on the breakpoint. And this isn't a bug here. What you're seeing is just it has too much padding on this 5% width element. So it's just breaking the container. So what you want to do in that case is just make sure that you're using the right column size. So we could do some kind of responsive column work here, like column dash 100. And have this column 5 and column 95 at whatever breakpoint you need them at. Alright, so I think that's going to do it for today's video, or this part of the video anyway. And in the next video we're going to take a look at our variables and see what we can do about these colors and make them more interesting using Sass's color functions. Thanks.